The hospital smelled faintly of antiseptic and wilted flowers, the kind that families brought out of obligation and forgot to water. Amelia lay in bed, her body wrapped in a cold stillness that wasn't only from the air conditioning. The surgery had gone well, the doctors said, as well as a surgery that risky could go. Her body, however, carried the weight of 1,000 invisible knives, stitches tugging with every breath, muscles trembling from the trauma of the operating table, veins still marked with IV scars. She stared at the white ceiling and tried to steady her breathing. Recovery would not be easy. Dr. Lawson had made that painfully clear. You'll need support for the first few weeks, he had said, looking her straight in the eye, as if to ensure she understood. Someone to drive you, to help with groceries, to make sure you don't push yourself too quickly. It's not just about rest, Amelia. It's about survival. The word survival lingered long after he left the room. And that was why she'd picked up her phone that night in the hospital, hands trembling as she scrolled through her contacts. She hated asking for help. Her life had been a testament to self-sufficiency. She had always been the one to drive her mother to appointments, to babysit her niece at the last minute, to drop everything when her brother needed money. She was the giver, the dependable one, the steady presence. But now, for the first time in years, she needed someone to show up for her. She dialed her mother first. "Mom," she whispered, her voice hoarse from anesthesia and exhaustion. "They're discharging me tomorrow. Could you pick me up from the airport when I land, please? I can't manage the drive alone." There was a pause on the other end, the kind that made her heart sink before words were even spoken. "Oh, honey," her mother said, almost casually, "tomorrow's not a good day. Your father and I have tickets to the theater. We booked them months ago. You understand, don't you?" Amelia blinked, fighting back the sting in her eyes. "I just had major surgery, Mom. I can't." Her mother cut her off with a sigh. "You're strong. You'll figure it out. We'll see you once you're back and settled." The call ended before Amelia could reply. Her chest tightened, not from the incision, but from the familiar ache of being dismissed. She tried her brother next. "Hey, can you pick me up from the airport tomorrow? I'll be weak." "Tomorrow?" He let out a laugh, as though she'd suggested something absurd. "Now I can't. I've got work, and then I promised the guys I'd watch the game. You'll manage. Grab an Uber. Isn't that what they're for?" By the time she called her sister, her voice trembled with desperation. "Please," she begged. "I don't have anyone else. Just meet me when I land, help me get home. I promise I won't ask for more." Her sister hesitated for half a second, long enough to stir hope, but then said, "Tomorrow's Lily's recital. I can't miss it. You'll be fine, Amelia. You always are." The final words cut deeper than the scalpel had. "You always are," as if her strength made her unworthy of care, as if because she had always endured, she should endure again. Alone, broken, and bleeding inside. That night, she stared at the dark window of her hospital room. Beyond the glass, the city lights flickered with life, families driving home together, couples walking hand in hand. She imagined herself among them, just one more person embraced in love and belonging. But reality pressed against her chest, like a stone. She was leaving tomorrow, and no one who shared her blood would be waiting for her. Her stomach turned with a mixture of anger and grief. She had given them so much: rides, money, time, loyalty. She had been their safety net, the one they leaned on without hesitation. Yet when her life wavered on the edge of fragility, they chose convenience over compassion. For the first time in years, Amelia felt the full weight of her family's indifference. And as the pain from her surgery pulsed through her body, another pain rooted itself deeper, the kind that wasn't stitched shut by doctors. A whisper formed in the back of her mind, sharp and cold: "If they won't be there when you are broken, why should they deserve you when you are whole?" The plane touched down with a jolt, pulling Amelia from the restless sleep she had managed between waves of pain. Her body felt heavy, stitched together by threads that pulled at every breath. She winced as the seatbelt pressed against her abdomen, but she forced herself upright, swallowing down the dizziness. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back," the flight attendant's cheerful voice announced over the intercom. The cabin filled with the shuffle of passengers eager to leave. For most of them, this was a return to loved ones, families waiting with flowers, children squealing with delight, lovers embracing after days apart. For Amelia, it was something else entirely: silence. She lingered until the aisle cleared, dragging her small carry-on with trembling hands. Her muscles screamed in protest, but she had no choice. She'd hoped, Naba Veli, that perhaps someone had changed their mind. That maybe her mother would surprise her at the gate, or her sister would show up late but apologetic. Hope was cruel like that, refusing to die even when it was poisoned. The moment she stepped into the arrivals hall, reality crushed her. Families surged forward, laughter and embraces echoing in the air. She watched a little girl run into her father's arms, watched an elderly woman cry into her son's shoulder, watched strangers find warmth in one another. And then there was her, standing alone, swaying on unsteady legs, scanning faces that never searched for hers. No one had come. The weight of it broke something inside her. She gripped her suitcase handle so tightly her knuckles blanched, blinking furiously to stop the tears. Not here, not where the whole world could see her abandonment. She made it only a few steps before her knees buckled. She sank against a cold metal bench, chest heaving, pain radiating through her body like fire. Her vision blurred, and for one terrifying moment, she wondered if her body was giving up on her too. "Mom, are you all right?" A voice broke through the haze. A man, mid-30s, kind eyes, a face etched with concern, knelt in front of her. His hand hovered as though he wanted to help but feared hurting her. I'm fine." Amelia lied, her throat raw. He didn't believe her. "You don't look fine. Do you have someone picking you up?" The question was a dagger. She shook her head, ashamed, unable to explain how an entire family could abandon their own daughter at her weakest. The man glanced around, then gently offered his hand. "Let me get you to a cab. At least that much I can do." She hesitated, pride warring with desperation. But her body decided for her. With a small nod, she let him help her up. His grip was steady, careful, as though he understood without words that she was fragile. The cab ride blurred into a haze of pain and exhaustion. She leaned her head against the window, the city passing in streaks of light and shadow. When the driver pulled up to her apartment, she fumbled for her wallet, but the stranger gently stopped her. "Don't worry about it," he said softly. "Just take care of yourself, okay?" She wanted to ask his name, to cling to the brief kindness he offered, but her voice failed her. By the time she found the strength to whisper, "Thank you," he was already gone. Inside her apartment, silence greeted her. Not the warm silence of comfort, but the heavy kind that settles when no one is waiting for you. She collapsed onto her bed, clutching her stomach as tears finally broke free. Hours later, through swollen eyes, she opened her phone. Notifications blinked on the screen. Her family posting photos, laughing at dinner, attending her niece's recital, celebrating their unbreakable bond. Her chest hollowed. They had abandoned her at her lowest, but boasted to the world of their closeness. She scrolled past picture after picture until she couldn't bear to see another smiling face. Alone in the darkness of her room, Amelia whispered to herself the words no one else had given her. "You deserved better." And for the first time, she believed it. The days after the airport felt like a blur stitched together by pain and silence. Amelia spent most of them curled beneath a blanket, her body battling weakness, while her mind battled something darker, the weight of betrayal. Every movement reminded her of the stitches that held her together. Every glance at her phone reminded her of the people who had chosen not to. She could have stayed there, could have let bitterness swallow her whole, but Amelia had never been the kind to surrender. Not to sickness, not to loneliness, not to the cruelty of those who claimed to love her. On the third night, unable to sleep, she rose from her bed and stood before the mirror. Her reflection startled her. Pale skin, tired eyes, and the faint lines of pain carved across her face. She looked broken. She felt broken, and yet, somewhere in the hollow space left by her family's absence, a spark flickered. "If they won't take care of me," she whispered to the woman in the glass, "then I'll take care of myself, better than they ever could." It was not an oath shouted in defiance, but a quiet promise, one she intended to keep. The weeks that followed were brutal. Recovery was slow, every step a battle. She learned to move carefully, to cook meals in small batches she could store, to manage the swelling pain with patience instead of tears. Each day she gained a little more strength, and with that strength came clarity. Her family hadn't just failed her in a single moment. Their neglect was a pattern, one she had been too blind, or too forgiving, to acknowledge. She had given them everything: time, loyalty, sacrifices that had cost her opportunities, relationships, even her peace. In return, she had received scraps. But no more. By the time her stitches dissolved and the scars began to fade, Amelia had already begun writing a new chapter for herself. She poured her restless nights into work, reviving the small business idea she had once shelved because her brother needed help with rent and her sister wanted her to babysit every weekend. Now, with no one to lean on her, she leaned into her own ambition. Her skills, long buried beneath obligation, began to bloom. She started designing, writing, marketing, whatever her restless mind and tired body could manage. The stranger's kindness at the airport had stayed with her, reminding her that goodness still existed, even if it didn't come from where she expected. Slowly, her life took on a shape that was hers alone. Orders trickled in, clients returned. Months later, what had begun as a survival tactic turned into success. And with success came freedom. For the first time in years, Amelia had money in her account that wasn't earmarked for someone else's emergency. She had evenings that weren't stolen by last-minute demands. She had mornings where she woke to silence and realized it wasn't loneliness anymore. It was peace. Her family noticed, of course. They called occasionally, their voices sweet with curiosity. "You've been quiet lately," her mother remarked once. "Busy, I guess." "Yeah," Amelia answered simply, not offering more. She didn't need them to know the details. Let them wonder. Behind closed doors, however, she flourished. The scar on her abdomen faded, but the scar in her heart transformed. What had once been a wound was now a reminder. She had survived what was meant to break her, and she had done it alone. And in the quiet of her apartment, surrounded by the fruits of her own effort, she realized something profound. Her revenge was already taking shape, not through anger, not through confrontation, but through the undeniable glow of a woman who no longer needed the people who had failed her. For the first time, Amelia smiled, not out of joy, but out of triumph. She was rising, and one day soon, those who had left her at her weakest would have no choice but to see just how powerful she had become. Time passed. What had once been fragile days of recovery had become months of rebuilding, and then years of transformation. Amelia's business grew beyond what she had dared to dream. The woman who had once sat weeping alone in a dark apartment was gone, replaced by someone stronger, sharper, untouchable. She traveled now, business trips, conferences, weekends by the sea when she chose to rest. Each scar, physical and emotional, had become part of her armor. She carried herself with a quiet confidence that needed no explanation. Her family, meanwhile, had begun to unravel. Her brother lost his job and called her, his voice tinged with desperation. "Amelia, you've always been the one we could count on. I just need a little help until I get back on my feet." Her sister's marriage fractured, and she sent long, rambling messages about how hard it was to raise Lily alone. "You've always been so dependable. Could you take her for a few weeks, just until I figure things out?" Even her parents, once so dismissive, reached out when their finances tightened after a bad investment. "Honey, family should stick together in tough times," her mother said sweetly, as though she hadn't abandoned Amelia in her toughest. Amelia listened each time, calm, silent, a smile playing at her lips that they couldn't see through the phone. She remembered the airport, the cold metal bench beneath her, the tears she swallowed because no one came. She remembered dragging her suitcase, with stitches pulling at her body. She remembered the stranger's kindness, the only kindness she'd received that day, and she remembered the silence of her family, louder than any words. So when her brother asked for money, she said softly, "I wish I could, but I can't help you." When her sister begged for childcare, Amelia answered, "I'm too busy." When her parents pleaded for support, she responded, "I hope you'll figure it out. You're strong. You always are." The same words they had once thrown at her now returned, not in cruelty, but in clarity. For a moment, each call ended in stunned silence. They had expected the old Amelia, the giver, the rescuer, the woman who always bent until she broke. Instead, they found someone who no longer needed them, someone who had built a life so full that their absence no longer left a hole. It wasn't loud revenge. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, deliberate, undeniable. Her triumph wasn't in watching them suffer. It was in knowing that their choices had cost them her. The daughter, the sister, the woman who had once held them all together, now lived a life in which they were nothing but shadows. One evening, Amelia stood on the balcony of her new apartment, overlooking the city lights. The same city she had once returned to in pain, abandoned and alone. She breathed in the night air, her chest rising easily, no longer weighed down by scars or sorrow. She didn't need to punish them. Life had already done that. Her revenge was sweeter than anger. It was freedom. Because while her family remained tangled in the webs they had woven for themselves, Amelia was soaring. And this time, she had no intention of letting anyone clip her wings.